The rain poured mercilessly, drenching the streets and painting the city in a dull, gray haze. Claire sat slumped at the corner table of a small, near-empty cafe. Her coffee sat untouched, growing lukewarm. The weight of her mistakes clung to her like the rain on the windows. She'd failed again. Another job interview ending with a polite smile and ambiguous assurances that she wasn't the right fit. Claire had always been a dreamer. Ever since she was young, she'd imagined herself as the CEO of her own design firm. But life had thrown curveballs that left her questioning if she even had any talent to begin with. Eviction notices at the edge of her vision, unanswered calls from her parents, whom she had repeatedly promised she was doing fine, and a pile of rejection emails that dwarfed any confidence she had left. As the doorbell of the cafe jingled, another customer walked in, shaking water off their tattered umbrella. It was an older man, face marked with experience, carrying an air of quiet resilience. He glanced around the almost empty room before settling at the table just across from Claire. She barely noticed him, too caught up in her mental spiral to care. Minutes passed before the stranger cleared his throat. "Excuse me," he said, his voice smooth but weathered. "I don't mean to bother you, but I couldn't help noticing that look on your face." Claire looked up, startled. "What look?" she asked warily. "The look of someone who thinks they're at the end of their road," the man replied, his tone gentle. "I've worn that look myself 100 times." Claire shifted uncomfortably, unsure of whether to open up or brush the man off. But something about him felt safe, like he wasn't another person pretending to understand. Curiosity got the better of her. "And what happened to you?" she asked, folding her arms defensively. The man smiled faintly. "I learned that it wasn't the end of the road. It was just a bend. You see, 20 years ago, I had nothing. My business crumbled. My house was repossessed. My family didn't want to speak to me. I was living out of my car and stealing Wi-Fi from a library just to find a job," he said, his voice soft but steady. Claire raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "And then what? You magically fixed your life?" He chuckled. "Not magically, but step by step. You see, what changed everything wasn't money or luck. It was a single piece of advice someone gave me. Advice that I'll share with you, if you'll listen." Claire leaned forward despite herself. "Okay, fine. What was it?" The old man's eyes seemed to gleam as he said, "Define yourself, or the world will do it for you. The world will slap on a label, tell you you're not good enough, and try to box you in. But if you take the time to figure out what you stand for, your values, your purpose, then no rejection, no failure can ever take that away." Claire stared at him, the words echoing in her head. Define yourself. The simplicity of it struck her deeply. She had spent years letting every rejection chip away at her until she wasn't sure who she was anymore. She thought about her childhood sketchbooks buried in her closet, the late nights she spent doodling designs, and the long forgotten dreams that brought her joy. Somewhere along the way, she'd lost that girl. "Was it easy?" she asked softly. The man shook his head. "No, but it's worth it. I rebuilt my life because I stopped letting others tell me who I was supposed to be. I started small, freelancing odd jobs, networking with people who appreciated my craft, learning every day. It took 10 years to become successful, but I wouldn't trade a second of that journey." Claire's heart stirred. She glanced at the steaming coffee cup in front of her. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. Not a roaring blaze, not yet, but a tiny, persistent spark. The old man stood to leave, gathering his umbrella. "The storm ends, eventually. It always does," he said, looking at her with a knowing smile. "Remember, defining yourself isn't about perfection. It's about persistence." As the cafe door jingled shut behind him, Claire grabbed her phone. For the first time, she didn't open her email or scroll through rejection letters. Instead, she began drafting ideas for a portfolio that told the story of her dreams, her struggles, and everything in between. The rain outside continued, but inside, Claire's storm began to clear. Step by step, she thought to herself. Step by step,